Ladies and gentlemen, the e-seminar is starting. James, please go ahead.
Well, hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Beyond BYOD, the Path Forward to Mobility Management. Robert, welcome to you, sir. See you out there in our audience. We've got Burke online as well. Duke and Catherine, welcome to you. Tony, thanks for taking some time to join us as well. A lot of folks online, so appreciate all of you taking time to join us here. James Hilliard on board as the moderator for this event, sponsored by Pomeroy and brought to you all by the team at eWeek. Couple things I want to go over here, and first and foremost, just ever so briefly remind you that we'd love to be involved with you here. And one of the ways you can make sure that you can be involved with the entire event is make sure your pop-up blockers are turned off so that you can access things like polls and some other downloads that we have available for you. If you do have any technical problems, you can definitely use the little chat window. Shoot in a note. We've got some technical support folks that can help you out. We don't anticipate any issues like that, but if something comes up, feel free to go ahead and do that. And first and really the biggest invite to all of you is to ask questions or share experiences or challenges or ask for some tips from our speakers here today. Absolutely, we've got a presentation, but we want to tailor some of that to the needs that you all have. So use the Q&A to get those questions and comments and ideas in throughout the presentation. I'll mix some of those in as we go along through today's event. Download of the slides will be available as a PDF from our console. We also have a brochure out there. I'm going to touch on that a bit later on. I want to get into the presentation, kind of where we're going here. We'll take a little bit of time early on, talk a little bit about where we stand today, our mobility landscape. We'll get into some of those challenges out there for folks. We'll give you some kind of best practices and lessons that we've been learning and need to be learning. And then towards the end of the presentation, something that I always like to see mixed into these events is, okay, you've just told us a bunch of stuff. Is it really working? Where is it working? How is it working? So a couple case studies that we want to share with all of you. So that's what we're going to be looking to do a bit later on in the presentation. I've got two gentlemen from Pomeroy on board. I want to introduce the two of them, then we're going to dive into a poll question, and then we'll kick things off with Gerard Coughlin. I'll introduce him first. He's joined us on a couple of events before, so welcoming him back. Managing Director of End User Services for Pomeroy. More than 20 years experience designing and implementing IT infrastructure services. He's done that across multiple industry verticals out there. He is ITIL V3 certified as a professional there, specializing in end-user services, remote infrastructure management, as well as data center outsourcing. Glad to have Gerard on board, and again, he'll kick things off for us here in a little bit after our first poll question. And then we're going to get into some good kind of, we'll call it color commentary and some other content from Hugh Walton. Glad to have him on board. He spends a whole lot of time out in the field with clients, so when we can strap him down to a desk to share with us on events like this, we do appreciate his time. He's a senior solution architect, mobility services there at Pomeroy. Again, 20 years in IT, mobility, virtualization, data center ops, et cetera. His current role, as I said, works daily with clients out there, really across North America, assessing their business requirements, designing and ultimately deploying mobility solutions, holds numerous tech certs out there, including Microsoft and AirWatch, Motorola, Cisco, Apple, all follow his business card. So we're glad to have him on board. And a little side note, sometimes we get a little personal here, and found out as we were going through getting to know Hugh and bringing him on board here, he is practicing to speak Italian. He's doing it a lot, but he promised he would not dive into that side of his linguistics during today's event. So to that I say, grazie a Dio. Hugh, I think I got that right, saying right, thank goodness. But we're glad to have you on board. Appreciate you taking time to hang out with us for this hour. Folks, the poll question that I alluded to earlier coming up on your screen right now, and we really want to kind of get an idea. And we do a lot of these types of polls in terms of seeing where people may be in terms of an issue, a priority. So we're asking about the priority here. Let me come back to that and push that back out there for the audience, that we are looking at the what is your top mobility priority this year? Mobile device management, MDM. Is it mobile and enterprise security? Always kind of top of mind for teams out there. Platform and device migration or deployment. We're looking at end-user support or your service desk. Is that one of your top mobile priorities this year? Consumer devices, BYOD, is that still something top of your list, or telecom expense management? So go ahead and take a few moments here to vote in on that poll. We'll share the results here in just a little bit. I see the numbers of our audience continuing to grow, so welcome to everyone out there. Thank you for taking time to join us for the event. Just getting underway here. We're going to be going into the main part of our presentation. We've carved out about probably 35 minutes or so. I think that's how long we'll go, and then we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A. So please make sure you continue to get those questions and comments into us. Mark and Kaz on board. James just getting in here. Kathleen, welcome to you. Middle of a poll question right now. Just getting an idea from this audience which best describes your top mobility priority this year. You see the answers up there on the screen. I'm going to take a little preview peek at those results and see how many folks have had a chance to vote. A lot of you actually have been able to get in here, so good on that. Let me give you about 5 more seconds. We'll do a little 3 seconds, 2 seconds, and 1. Let me push those results out so you can all see them, kind of see where you land in terms of the other audience members out there. And Gerard, let me do this. Let me kind of turn to you as the results are up here. We're seeing in that mid-30% range, both mobile and enterprise security as well as consumer devices, still kind of top priorities. We see some single digits on a few of the other things, mobile device management creeping up a little bit into the double-digit answers there. Anything from this audience, Gerard, kind of really stand out, or is this similar to what you've heard from other teams and people out there?
No, James, I'll tell you, I mean, I'm actually not really surprised by that, because if you think about it, they're almost related, right? If you look at the percentages, it's almost exact, right? I mean, because, with the proliferation of people bringing their own personal devices to work now, it's a huge concern from a security standpoint for a lot of organizations. And, people are struggling to say, okay, I need to make sure that, when I let that device on my network, it's properly secured, and, not even just initially, but also for the maintenance of that device. I need to be able to make sure that I can push down the policies, update the policies, protect the corporation from that device being used improperly. So, and with people bringing their own devices to work these days, it's a big challenge. So yeah, I'm not surprised by that. They're actually interrelated.
All right, hey, good stuff.
Yeah,
go ahead, Hugh.
No, I'd agree with Gerard. BYD is a major force in mobility, and they're tied tightly together. When it's corporate-owned devices, it's a lot easier to dictate what's going to happen on that device. But when it's your own device, your users are bringing it in, security is a much more high-profile area to concentrate on to make sure that the right content is getting to the right users. So.
No, absolutely. Well, folks, I appreciate you voting in on that poll. Again, we're going to dive into kind of the content. I think this slide, Gerard, as I, again, turn things over to you, we'll see a little kind of compare contrast with those results that we just saw, looking at some of the top priorities out there. And, folks, keep those questions and comments coming in. So to Kevin and Ginny out there, Bill and everyone else, keep them coming on in. We'll get those prioritized. We'll mix things in as we go along. But, Gerard, with that, I'm going to put it into your hands.
Great. Thank you, James. So before we dive in deeper, what I'd like to do is set the stage for how mobility is being viewed by top corporate executives like everybody on the call today. I mean, what's represented here are the results of a study conducted by our friends at the Enterprise Mobility Exchange, which outlines the top priorities executives have with regard to mobility. And it's both looking back the past 18 months or so, which is that top half of the slide, and looking forward about 18 months or so, which is the bottom block. And it really tells an interesting story, certainly for the top 5 investment priorities, which essentially you can see mobile, app, development, security, connectivity, device management, and BYOD. Where organizations are expecting to invest is mostly the same going forward when you compare the coming months to the past, but except what clients and executives are expecting to spend more on going forward is cloud computing and really the Internet of Things. But while you'll see that mobility, connectivity, and MDM slip slightly, but they actually did stay in the top 10 of mobile investment priorities. And what I think this indicates is that we're essentially at a tipping point where IT management recognizes that it's now going to be required to deliver mobility solutions in a more efficient manner, like for example, remote delivery of applications, while also trying to accommodate the blending of mobility between the personal and the enterprise, the Internet of Things. And the lines between that, between the personal and the enterprise, are becoming blurred. And it's becoming more increasingly difficult for IT organizations to absolutely dictate the mobility technologies required for end users to do their jobs. But I think everyone on this call can probably remember the days where it was like IT said, "This is it. This is the technology you get," and end of story. And those days are really gone, right? Especially around mobility and the personalization of it. Really, the world is changing. So, what's driving the need for these investments? Obviously there are a variety of different reasons. I'm not going to go through each of these individually, but I do think that the top three are worth mentioning. The top driver, according to the survey participants, is increasing productivity of the employees. But end users, they're now demanding, they're not even just requesting, the ability to do their jobs anywhere, anytime, with any device, any app, etc. And the reason being is that the term mobility now, quote unquote, it's not just talking about the device anymore. Mobility now, it represents a lifestyle or a work style, really. And here at Pomeroy, we always refer to it as giving end users the Sunday night experience on Monday morning. If you think about yourselves, right, think about how productive you are on the weekends, just doing your own personal tasks. Right? Think about all the flexibility you have to manage your personal lives on the go. And you certainly don't want to be restricted with what you can do to be productive when you show up to work on Monday morning. And that's the idea here, is that how do you transfer that to the work environment, right, to the enterprise? The second driver is improving customer service. Now, IT organizations, they want to be able to extend support for their end users in a way that fits this new work style. Right, gone are the days where organizations only provide one method, for example, for an end user to initiate support. You need to extend mobile solutions to the end users to provide omni-channel access to your support organizations, or provide the end users themselves with the tools to support themselves. And in that way, improving the customer service they're going to get from the IT organization. And lastly, by introducing mobile solutions, it allows IT organizations the ability to take a new look at how their operations are being performed today and rethink it and drive efficiencies into the operations. So, keeping that in mind, there are obstacles that get in the way when we seek to implement and deploy and institutionalize mobility, which are basically the same people, process, technologies, tools, issues that we deal with every day. And I don't think there are any surprises here, to be honest, in this graphic. In fact, again, several of them are the same challenges we all have to overcome when introducing new technology solutions into our organizations. But let's look at the top three here. So, with regard to mobility, the challenges faced really is how do you integrate with legacy systems? I mean, mobility is relatively new, in the scheme of things, right? And a lot of the applications and the systems that we all use to drive our company's performance, they're not made for that. How do you deal with that? How do you integrate legacy systems in this new mobile world? And secondarily, it's securing stakeholder buy-in. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but it's really like now, it's beyond just IT's decisions, and it's really now expanded into what the businesses need and the role that the businesses themselves need to take in these decisions to drive business forward. And how do you identify all those stakeholders, and how do you get them all to agree that this is the path forward? And then lastly, looking at the top three, change management is huge, right? I mean, if you're going to now instill or infuse a new mobility strategy and new technologies into your environment, that can be pretty significant. It can be pretty dramatic. And you need to make sure you manage that properly. And And companies that don't have proper change management in place today, it's a big challenge for them, right? And it really is dangerous, right? Because if you don't do it properly, the results can be really, I don't want to say disastrous, but really you're not going to get the benefits that you wanted out of your mobility solution that you are implementing. So these are, top 10 lessons learned that people now, there are more surveys done where people who have gone through a mobility strategy, people who have gone through, your peers, your colleagues in the industry, who have gone through that process of introducing a mobility solutions and really kind of changing the enterprise in the way that they're doing business today. These are the top 10 lessons they've learned. I won't dive in too deeply on each of them, but I think they're all worth mentioning at a high level because there really is significant value, obviously, in learning from your peers. So let's kind of take them one by one. So really, number one that came across was, thinking big, but start small. Sometimes, people want to just let's storm that hill and take it, right? And when you're talking about mobility, there's too much complexity. There's too many intricacies to your business model to really take that approach. You want to think big. You want to have a roadmap, but start smaller. Identify business units or areas where it might make more sense to implement mobility, and you learn from that. So you minimize the risks, and then you can roll it out larger and larger as you go. Number two, I kind of spoke to already a little bit about, integrating mobile applications with your operational systems. That's where transformation lies. So it's not like rolling out applications for the sake of applications or mini applications that really aren't affecting your business in general. Right? You really want to look at the applications you're deploying that are really having a impact on your business. What applications are you going to roll out to your remote sales force so they can go out there and sell more things? Right? That's really transformational, and that's really where you need to be thinking from a strategy standpoint. Thirdly, ensuring business unit accountability and responsibility. Again, it's not an IT decision anymore. In fact, they're the ones, the business units, who are really turning to IT and asking or saying, hey, we're demanding this now. Well, you know what? If they're going to do that, then they have accountability, right? They have responsibility to work with IT to make sure that IT is delivering to them those mobile technologies they do need to do their jobs. So, you have to get that across. You almost have to build a partnership, right, with your business units. Number four is balancing that security and the end user experience, right? I mean, end users, we all know on this call, right? End users, they just want convenience, and they don't want passwords, right? They don't want to have to change their password every 90 days, right? They just want the convenience. You have to balance that. Yes, we need to improve the end user experience, but you know what? At the same time, we all have responsibilities to our companies as officers of the company to protect it, right? So how do you find that balance, right? When you're extending security policies to these mobile devices, what are the right levels, right? What's something that's not like overbearing to the end users, but still protects the organization? Number five, improving vendor management. When Hugh talks a little bit later today, he's going to talk about, a comprehensive view of what really mobility looks like, right, across a life cycle approach. There's a lot going on there. And, some people, they're able to do it all. Other people, though, have, given some portions of their mobility life cycle to a vendor or a partner. And you need to make sure that, you have the proper vendor management practices in place to make sure that whatever that partner of yours is delivering, they're delivering it in the way that it's supporting your strategy and it's integrated properly within your larger life cycle. And Hugh will get into that. He'll share some of that. I've already really talked about number six, which is having that change management strategy in place and gaining the stakeholder engagement. Right? It's just making sure that whatever changes you are injecting into the environment are being handled properly. And then scrutinize your business processes. Right? Think about what I just said about the remote sales staff. Right? You don't just roll out an application or mobile technology to the sales staff. What are they going to do with it? Right? How are they going to use it? What business processes do you need to change now to make that remote sales staff more efficient, right? And just rolling out the tool itself, the solution, doesn't mean it's going to be used properly and grow your business in the way you want to. Number 8, accurately define costs and timelines. We all know that. We've all done projects in the past. And if they're not planned properly, if they, from an understanding up front of what the estimated costs are, when they're going to be completed, they can easily go sideways, right? And all of a sudden you have a monster on your hand. So, it's the same with mobility. You need to make sure that you have that strategy in place, the vision, and you're properly planning for it. Number 9, being able to change course when plans and products fail to deliver. You have to build in flexibility. I mean, the change in the mobility space is happening so fast that, you need to react. You need to be cognizant of all those changes that are happening in the industry. And you need to basically say, do I need to adjust here? Do I need to adjust there? And you have to make sure you have that flexibility. And lastly, really, it's kind of the same, mapped or joined with number 9 there, which is developing a strategy for exactly that. If there is volatility in the operating systems, the tools, the hardware, right? What are you going to do? And you need to make sure that you have the ability to react to that.
Gerard, as I was looking and listening to you and seeing all these lessons learned, one of the big, for me, striking takeaways is communication between the different groups now. I mean, I could almost make a case that each one of these fits into one huge lesson learned of you need to be working together. We can't do the silo thing anymore. And it's the communication between so many different units. Is it fair to say that the companies you've come across, the ones that do a great job of communicating all these ideas, getting on the same page, those are the ones that have had the most success with their mobility plans?
Yeah, I think that's really fair, James. And I think it's communication, I think is the right word, because it's, the IT organizations listening to the businesses to say, hey, this is what we need to be better. This is what we need to sell more to grow our companies, right? And then on the reverse side, it's, the businesses now listening to IT to say, okay, we get it, we hear you, but, let's talk about the solution you need. Maybe you can give it. Yep, let's do it. Or maybe there are limitations, and it becomes a two-way conversation, which is, yes, we can accommodate that, or yes, we can accommodate that partially, but here's the value you're still going to get out of it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's about conversation. It's about communication.
Yeah, and go back to 4 here, the security and the user experience. There may be that one app that absolutely we do need to change that password every 3 months, and that's just going to be our policy. But hey, I get it, business unit. We're hearing that these 3 other apps that may not be as mission critical or don't have that sensitive data, okay, we can do away with some of the password changes there, right? Those are the types of communications and conversations and give and take to really work as partners with each other.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
All right, good stuff. Folks, if you have questions, comments, want to do any of that stuff, get that into the Q&A module. We've got some things that are queuing up in there, so please feel free to do so. As you see a little note here on the screen on this slide, we do have a couple of case studies coming up a bit later on about how a couple of companies really tackled some of these issues and are succeeding. So we'll be diving into that a little bit later. But Gerard, with that, let me throw things back to you for a little bit.
Sure, great. Yeah, thanks, James. So, moving on from the lessons learned by those organizations, really, if you think about it, because they had those lessons learned, they really kind of became more mature relative to integrating mobility into their companies, right? Just by naturally, inherently, they were, just grew into a maturity. So if you look at the top of the slide here, right, the optimized journey to mobility, you can define mobile maturity as, I'm going to read it because it's a mouthful, right? Overcoming the complexity of integration, deployment, security, and management of mobile apps, adopting new architectures, technologies, methodologies, and most significantly, new mindsets. I mean, if you read that, right, that's a pretty involved definition. Look at all the components that you need to consider for you to grow in maturity, just in this one sentence. And, I guess it's probably safe to say that many of us aren't quite there yet. And in fact, many of us may exhibit one or more of the following examples of early stage mobile maturity when compared to Gartner's maturity model, which is kind of represented on the right there. But some of the things, that we may be currently exhibiting is, an inability to see the forest for the trees, right? Meaning a lack of strategy and vision, can result in an inability to exploit enterprise-wide opportunities. Secondly, agility. Sometimes, there's those of us in IT, can be late, right, or reluctant adopters of new technologies, and it slows the efforts to innovate and create value. Or some of us can be really, honestly, kind of obsessed with process, right? Some of us have a desire to be so process-driven that it gets in the way of that agility. And then risk, identifying the risks and finding a reasonable balance between the right amount of security and fostering productivity and creating business value as a result. So, if you think about that, if that's the case, what do we do? What's the best path forward to start working our way up that maturity scale, from ad hoc or repeatable all the way really up to ideally being, innovating from a mobility standpoint within our organizations, right? What I'd like to do is ask my colleague now, Hugh, to talk about how we at Pomeroy have seen our clients and our partners achieve success in that regard.
Hey, thanks very much, Gerard. I appreciate it. Can everybody see the assessment slide?
They can now because I just pushed it out to them, so they're all set on that. So what do we need to look at here, Hugh?
So no, thank you. I'm just making sure I've got the flow of the console right. I apologize. So we've heard from Gerard how complex mobility plans can be. And the best way to kind of clear the weeds, if you will, is to start with an assessment, because we don't know where we're going to go unless we know where we are. And as the tagline on the slide says, it's often what we don't know that matters most. And, we've touched on the whole vision strategy, think big, start smaller. That's almost the definition of, hey, mobility is exciting, it's game changing. But before we haul off and go gangbusters, let's start small and let's kind of assess where we are. To your point, James, getting the communication between the lines of business and the key stakeholders is very essential. Understanding, the mobile environment and how it's going to impact your security and risk management. Also, what are your mobile support requirements? What is it going to take to support our mobile initiatives in our infrastructure? These are just a couple of key things. And I feel that assessments show you where the gaps are and allows you to kind of, develop a path forward or a roadmap to success. So on the next slide, and I hope I'm there with everybody, or you're there with me. Pomeroy goes about this with two type of mobility assessments. We have a quick start and a more strategic one, and this kind of falls back onto Gerard's last slide about that Gartner level of maturity and which assessment is appropriate for you. But really quickly, we provide again the two types. The quick start strategic. It's quick start is a 5 to 7 week fast data collection, survey of mobile users. The more strategic one could, go from, maybe 2 to 3 months, where we're actually, instead of taking surveys, we're interviewing these stakeholders and lines of business leaders. The mobility, the quick start gives you kind of a survey result whose results are more self-explanatory, whereas the strategic one, it kind of creates a spider chart and a roadmap, a plan of where you need to, here's where you are, here's your level of maturity, here's where you need to go. So depending on where you fall and what's appropriate to your organization, dictates what kind of assessment and how in depth it needs to be. And so this next slide is kind of a case study of one of our customers that had to put on the brakes. They were very excited about mobile initiatives. They could see how mobility was transformative, and they were eager to deploy these new apps that they were getting their hands on, but they did it without stakeholder buy-in. No long-term organization or vision or strategy, or even an accurate assessment of risk, and no communication. And fortunately, in this instance, senior leadership was able to direct managers to reassess the risk and cost, build a practical strategy, and get buy-in and communicate with the other lines of business to make sure everything was aligned. And, they leveraged Pomeroy to come in and perform a mobility assessment to come up with some of these solution components, some of which were, a proof of concept that targeted the highest initiatives, and included in that was, the establishment of a mobility center of excellence. I emphasize that point because more often than not, with the advent of smartphones, it used to just be given off, who's going to manage these things and who's going to, do the day-to-day care and feeding of these smart devices without a strategic plan. And it's, hey, well, so-and-so used to do BlackBerry, so let's give it to that person. That's no longer feasible. These things are, very complex devices, and the impact on your enterprise and the risks are significant to where you kind of need to establish within your organization a mobility center of excellence, and that's kind of where we steered this client, and it paid off big time for them. And they were able to kind of stop and take a big step back. They went 180 degrees on their MDM choice, and they started focusing on, the basic building blocks of mobility, which are, in this next slide, to me, I call this the what, why, and who. What devices are you getting ready to bring into our environment? The impact of iOS versus Android, or even Windows 10. What are we really going to support? What devices? And the why is, why are we doing this? What is it? Is it truly transformative? Is there an application? Is it just as simple as making sure we get secure email out to people? Why are we doing this? So what is the device? Why are we doing this? And then the who. Who is going to be allowed to access some of our enterprise resources? We need to perform some sort of identity management and create access control lists, authorization, authentication to make sure that, these people with these devices that aren't traditionally, attaching to the network through some sort of LDAP or Active Directory are properly managed and identified. So how do you tie all these building blocks together? Well, the next slide may look foreign to you, but the concept should be very familiar. I look at mobile devices as another end-user compute device. It started out with desktops. It went to laptops, and now it's on tablets and smartphones. And so from end to end, there's procurement and activation, to deactivation and asset disposition. But in the middle are some of those support services that are germane to a mobility environment. So, you've got your what on the procurement and activation. In the middle, in the support, you've kind of got your why. What are we allowing them to get to? Is it an app? Is it content? Who is it? That's the whole, again, network access control and identity management. And then, the deactivation of the device once it's past its prime or the newest version is out there. How are we deactivating it, securely wiping it? And kind of layered on top of all that is telecom expense management, which I'm beginning to see as being very important. It provides an enterprise with a system of record from cradle to grave for that device, and it also kind of optimizes the plan and the cellular usage and things like that. So it's kind of essential to layer that on top of everything to make sure that not only you've got the who, what, and whys, but you've got the asset, the hard assets being covered too and being accounted for. So the next slide, the optimization payoff. You'll recall with Gerard, we talked about the top drivers for mobility and for example, increasing productivity and improving operational efficiency, reducing costs, profitability, et cetera. All these things on the left that, kind of make this thing complex, but it doesn't have to be, drives these direct benefits on the right. And on the next slide, I kind of want to just highlight, service desk and desk side support. And I've got a case study following this where they really spent the time and the effort to gear up their service desk with all the right tools and platforms. They were able to derive those benefits on the right. So this case study, we had a customer of ours that, these smartphones, these tablets were let loose in the wild, so to speak. The user experience was very poor. There was no asset management. They were getting devices and, may I enroll in what, or how do I get the applications, and how do I attach to the mail server? What wireless network should I be using? All of that was unclear, and it was taking a long time to, from delivery of the device to actually the user being productive was, unacceptable. And there was no asset management, and this ties back into the telecom expense management piece. Not only does that monitor your plan usage, but it's a system of record, and it kind of keeps track of your assets from cradle to grave. So the lines of business in this case study, we're getting pressure from management saying we've got to correct this ship. We've got some real numbers here that we're looking at that we're losing money, we're losing efficiency. So the solution was we're going to centralize user support on this. We're going to go to level 1 service desk associates. We're going to give them the tools and the platforms in order to support our user community better. And so, for one, adopting the right MDM, the mobile device management, and figuring out the right config process and incorporating things like Apple's device enrollment program sped up the time from delivery to actual functionality from, in some reported cases, believe it or not, 3 days to 45 minutes once they had the right platforms and config processes in place. When they adopted the right telecom expense management platform and the help desk was trained up on it and was familiar with it, all of a sudden the cost reduction was around $800K through device recovery. No longer were those devices, when the person left, was it being stuck into a drawer, or was it handed over to the manager? They just didn't know. And with that right platform and integrating it within the service desk, they were able to kind of meet these challenges and have those hard savings and the hard time to productivity from the time the user got the device to where they were actually using it and being operational. So I hope I've kind of explained briefly, how important proper assessment, which is key, and integration processes are essential to a successful mobility plan. I want to hand it back over to Gerard to share with you how Pomeroy can help with your mobility journey.
Great, thanks, Hugh. So, Hugh and I both, a couple times, I mentioned earlier that it's important that you start thinking about mobility as being more than just the device, right? And you remember, it's a work style now for the end users. And for that reason, we at Pomeroy focus our lifecycle approach specifically on the end user experience. Right? All of this technology is there for them to do their jobs anytime, any place. But it's important to recognize, though, that mobility as a solution, it actually comprises not just the end user-like solutions, but it also relies upon network and data center infrastructure as well to deliver those solutions. And it's really important to keep that in mind. Right? And these are the kind of things, that are listed on this slide here that relate to that. Right? As examples, these are the types of solutions that we've provided for other large companies in support of their mobility initiatives. It's things like, not just around service desk support, like that case study that Hugh just did, right? But virtual application deployment, on-premise cloud wireless deployments. Those are things that are inherent or vital, right, to mobility strategies, right? And again, to the right, these are the examples of customers we've done that for. And all we're suggesting here is that you also take the same comprehensive view yourselves when you're formulating your mobility strategy, whether you're using a partner or not, right? Whether you're performing all these activities on your own. It's really important to keep in mind that it's beyond just the end user. You have to look at your infrastructure, whatever network solutions you have in place, whatever data center solutions, just keep it all there. Again, it's all there to support the end user, but it's all interconnected. So to do that, right, to help you along the way, we really suggest that you keep the following things in mind that we believe will keep you on track. It's really kind of the path forward, right? And we highlighted 4 different things. The first is recognizing the mobility barriers. Many of those barriers include things like the complexity of the support, lack of the mobile strategy, not understanding the security and ID management you need to have in place, and just a non-optimized MDM mobility management solution. Keep that in mind. You got to recognize how well you're doing and how well you've thought out strategies for those kinds of things, right? You also want to do a basic assessment, right, like a quick start like Pomeroy has, but do it yourself even. Like go and look at what is your strategy, short and long term, right? These are the things that we can do now, right? And these are the things that we might grow into a year from now. Right? You have to assess yourself because essentially you have to know where you are before you know where you're going to go. And that's really important. Some people just dive in, both feet like, let's go, right? Let's put this, let's deploy all this mobile technology. You can't do that. Like take a step back. It's worth it to do that assessment, right? And the other thing really is just exploit those end-to-end leverage points, right? The life cycle that Hugh was showing you guys. There's so many, efficiencies when you look at it end to end, right? There's so many efficiencies you can drive into your operations today as opposed to looking at them as standalone, discrete types of activities. So it's important to evaluate yourself in the context of that. And lastly, just know when to get help, right? Via either a vendor partner or just internally yourselves, right? You have to talk to, as James and I were speaking about earlier, you have to talk to your business units. You have to get help from them because they're the ones who are defining what their people need to grow your business. You can't read their minds, right? So make sure that you're including them as stakeholders within this process, because otherwise it's going to be like the old days, right? You guys are just going to be rolling out technologies that may or may not support what the businesses need. So that really is crucial. Right? So James, I'd like to turn it back to you at this time. Just see if there are any questions from the audience that we can answer.
There are, and I want to, Gerard, slide right into one question here from Kevin, and because I think it's going right on to what you were talking about, saying that he gets some of the lines of business coming to him. They want something, of course, they want it yesterday, right? And okay, that's fine. We're here to help is IT's new kind of MO. But often Kevin doesn't get things like estimated costs or time or maybe some of the risk, so he's not getting some of that information. Do you have a good current kind of best practice to manage those types of requests? Or how do we go back as IT and say, cool, want to help, but I need X, Y, and Z? Or let's sit down and discuss, what are you seeing? What's a good way to go back and get some of the information that you need from the business?
Yep. And it really is, it's a bunch of different things I've seen, James. One is, exactly, setting up actual, structured, meetings, whatever, workshops, whatever it might be for, between IT and the businesses, where you actually need to sit down, and I mean you, meaning the IT organization, sit down and understand the businesses. Like, and I mean like, how do they make money, right? How do they do their jobs? And, like I said, an assessment. And before you can understand that, you can't move forward with a strategy. But when you do that, right, that's when you can speak to the businesses and say, I'm doing this to mitigate our risk, and there are costs involved. What's the cost benefit to roll out this technology? Are we going to grow our business, and how are we going to grow our business? Because many times, everybody has limited funds, right? So where are you going to spend that money? Right? Which business unit is going to be impacted the most and make the most, grow the business, most significantly by a mobile solution? And we've seen some of our customers, and we've participated in, doing things like establishing a mobility center of excellence. You get those people, you either hire it or you have people who are just, really good mobility people, and you establish, a focused group that is thinking through this and can present back to, the other thing we've seen, present back to like a technology steering committee. And, that technology steering committee, we've seen our customers, and frankly, we have one here at Pomeroy for ourselves to run our own business. Basically, is made up of both, IT folks, senior management, and business senior management. And it kind of forces that discussion. It forces you to talk in terms of the business and in terms of investments, right? Everybody wants it yesterday, but, that doesn't mean it's right.
And let me add too, if you don't mind, real quickly. It could be a transformative business thing that this line of business is looking for, and that's when you really need to assess and sit down and take a deep breath, and the cost can be in development and other things, or it could be a really quick hit where the application that the line of business is looking for is just a portal into existing infrastructures, say for instance Salesforce, and it's just adopting the right volume purchasing program with iTunes or the Google at Work docs or whatever it is to access that content. So, depending on the size and the scope, it dictates the kind of investment.
Let's go back to the idea of assessments, because it's garnered some questions and ideas in here. Hugh, I'll stick with you. The impact on an organization. Again, you shared kind of two types of assessments that you have available, and it's the kind of quick start or the strategic mobility assessment. But regardless of which one, is there a lot of heavy lifting done by the organization? Is most of that heavy lifting done by Pomeroy? The impact is what I'm trying to get at, because some people hear assessments and they get the idea, but they're like, man, that's going to add a whole lot more to my plate. I don't know if I can handle that now. There could be some restrictions. So anything you can share, and again, you get a lot of field experience of how much heavy lifting is on the company to go through and deal with one of these assessments.
Well, sure. That's a very good question, James. And I would say that, for companies that, are just looking to kind of get a baseline of where they are in their maturity, the quick start is a very easy assessment to do. There are survey questions that are submitted to lines of business, and they have responsibilities and deadlines to answer those questions. But it's very unintrusive, and it kind of gives a broad light onto where they are and what the expectations, of the lines of businesses. But when you move into the more strategic ones, that is more cumbersome, not cumbersome, but it requires involvement from your customer, from our customers. The example that I shared, they saw and they understood the transformative power of mobility, and they wanted to make sure that they were getting things right. So, the more strategic assessment does require a lot more of time and effort on the client's behalf, just in terms of, having interviews and understanding how their business works and having that explained, succinctly, so that we can come back and go, here's what we've heard from this person who is, the director of marketing, and we have found out this is essential, to their business, moving forward. And here are the gaps that we found from what their vision is to where you are from a platform standpoint. So, it's more involved, and obviously it takes a little bit more of the, the customer's time to make the effort to put in the right data for us to make the correct assessment.
But if you don't
to kind of add to that, really, is that we it is important to note, I think, though, too, that a lot of the customer involvement is really the upfront piece, right? Because it is gathering that data via interviews or surveys, or sitting down and talking about current strategy and roadmap, stuff like that. There is a period, though, when we go away and we're doing our stuff, right? We're doing the analysis of what we learned. We're putting together what we believe or see as being the near-term, mid-term, long-term recommendations, and then we re-engage on the back end. There might be some incremental touch points back to for status for sure, but also maybe for clarification. And then on the back end is really the executive readout, where we provide the results of the assessment itself. So I think from a timing standpoint, I would say over the course of the entire assessment, it's really kind of more of the upfront, when we would require more time invested by the customer, and then the rest of the way, a lot of it's happening just with ourselves.
And all I was going to add there, Gerard, is the idea of, but think about all the time you can waste if you're not getting that insight. If you're starting on something, you don't have that assessment, you don't have an idea of what your teams need, you can be going down the wrong path. And that can cost a whole ton of time, money, effort, reputation, those types of things. So, again, wanting to get in those insights, it sounds like the time is worth it. Let me move to a couple ideas here, and maybe this goes back, Gerard, I'll start with you, these centers of excellence. It really goes to, are you seeing, the skilled managers out there? Are you seeing the skilled in the trenches IT that are really have their handle on mobility these days? And those professionals are out there to really help and lead and drive our organization, understanding maybe the assessment that you return to them, saying, okay, these are all the things we need to do. And that's able to resonate with these professionals now because that knowledge is out there. Is that knowledge out there?
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, we're seeing, a great, wealth of talent out there, and it's at different levels too. I mean, you talked about the center of excellence. So if you think about that concept, those really are kind of your more experienced, potentially your more senior people, and those are the ones who may have really invested in their careers, right? Those are the people who are passionate about it. They may have gone out and they have their certifications in different types of mobility technologies, like a AirWatch or something like that, just to kind of throw an example out there, right? And so it's how do you leverage that? How do you leverage the people who are passionate about it, are investing in their careers around it, right? And they have that experience to be able to be forward thinkers, because that's really what you want a center of excellence to be doing, is to really be driving that vision. But it's not even that, because it's also really important. Like take a service desk. Take Hugh's case study, his second case study about the service desk there, where we had the client who who handed over a lot of mobility type responsibilities to the service desk. A service desk analyst, a level 1 analyst, or even a level 2 analyst, they might not have the expertise or the certifications, whatever it might be, in the mobility space, but they play a role in the mobility process. And so you even at that level, you need to look for people who have those kind of skill sets. And we are seeing that. I mean, we're in that business ourselves, right? We have a couple of our global service desks. And, we have to go out and recruit those resources to support our customers. And the good thing about it is that we are finding the talent out there, because it's such a hot technology, and it is the future, frankly, that, people are investing in themselves to be, students of those technologies.
Hugh, I want to come back to you and kind of touch a little bit on this when we were talking about those 10 lessons learned. And I brought up the example, sometimes you got to focus on that balance between the security and ease of use. Maybe some apps you lock down a little bit more, others are a little more free. And Tony out here saying, we need to, you all mentioned earlier, you need to balance security and user experience. Can you give some insights into how companies are doing just that so that, again, one doesn't become more of an issue than the other, right? Well, we want to make our customers and our clients really have ease of use, but now we're not secure as an organization. We know the pitfalls there. What are you seeing? How are people doing that balance?
So good question in two ways. So the old style IT way is, it's too much of a risk. I don't know what your device is doing. I'm not going to give you access. And so that's the bad end user experience, right? The good is, you know what? We're going to provide this to you. It's going to be limited. You're going to be restricted because, security necessitates that we are, proactive in our security. But there are things in mobile device management like collaboration, using, cloud type providers or even local repositories where you can push content and it's available based on access control list. It's available on geofencing, which is a concept that people aren't familiar with. In other words, if I'm in the office with my own device, my MDM is aware of that, and while I'm still on campus, I have access to this content. I can't copy it down, but I have access to it. And when I'm away from the office, my location services dictate that I don't have access to it. And kind of the next exciting thing, and I'll use AirWatch as an example, is NSX and the integration into Workspace ONE and AirWatch is that network access control. The device is arbitrary. Again, whether it's a laptop or a desktop, we want to give people the tools to do their jobs. And with these mobile devices, with MDM integration with NSX, these virtual networks allows us to kind of granularly manage what type of access a particular device, not just a particular device, but who's using that device, and understanding that persona and giving them access to the appropriate resources. So I think in the past it was just punishment, right, to the end users. I don't know what you have. I'm not giving you access. So now hey, I know what you have. I'm going to build a persona around you, and I'm going to allow you to get to these certain things. That doesn't mean it doesn't go without trial and error. Anybody on the line knows this. Well, I've got access to this, and I need access to that, and there's different protocols that you have to follow to give that. But instead of managing by punishment, it's managing by, hey, I've got tools that can allow me to leverage, granular access and access control lists to give you access to the content that you need to be productive.
Hugh, good stuff, sir. Gerard, appreciate your time as well. Folks, that is going to bring us to pretty much the top of the hour, and that's going to wrap things up here. But a couple of things I want to share with you before we all check out. First off, a big thank you to everybody and for the audience, all these questions and ideas that are coming in. Andrew and a few others saw some questions coming at the last moment here. We will collect those in a report. We will get those over to Gerard and Hugh. You can actually also visit Pomeroy.com, and you can connect with some of their experts via their website, and if you really want to get in touch with someone today. But we are, again, collecting the questions that came in that we didn't get to, and we'll look to get some responses out to all of you after the event. We have recorded today's presentation, so we're going to have this on demand for you in an archive. We'll get you a little alert out when that is available. You're also going to be able to check out eSeminarsLive.com, one of the eWeek websites. That's where you can see archives of this and other events. A little survey that we'd love to have you fill out. There's some other things to look at on the console as well, including in the resources area, a copy of the slides if you're looking for that PDF. And then an optimized mobility management brochure. Really what that is, I think, a great little recap of a lot of the things that were chatted about today. So again, if you want to take something away with you, have something kind of in print there, that brochure, Optimized Mobility Management, is something that you'll want to download right now from the console. With that, again, we are going to wrap things up. Do appreciate, again, all of you being on board. My thanks to Gerard and Hugh for their presentation and time on this event. On behalf of the Pomeroy team and the team at eWeek, we hope you have a great day. Thank you for taking time to view the presentation. Again, my name is James Hilliard, and we do look forward to talking to you all down the road.